You're very welcome to Tree Talk episode 212. Myself, Jack Neville. I'm Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. Another busy weekend of action for us to look back on. We obviously had two Limerick teams make it into Munster football finals. We have a pair of Limerick sides in Munster hurling action and Munster hurling final action this Sunday. We have the long-awaited intermediate hurling final in Limerick. We'll also be looking back at the other fixtures that took place over the weekend. We have the Junior B will be starting to get into full swing in Killeedy soon enough. And we also have Adare's win in London. So stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression again, we get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
You're very welcome today, Matt. We're recording live on this Wednesday afternoon. So if anyone's got any questions in or any comments like that, make sure if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you're liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. I suppose last Friday night, Matt, for 99% of the population, it was the Tie Show. But for yourself, the Tie Show was in Castlemahon on a Saturday afternoon. You were like a child at Christmas onto the field straight afterwards. I saw you into the main man there, David Clifford, and obviously Tyrone, Seamus Flanagan. All the stars were in show. With the obviously David is footballer of the year, but Dara Burns, the hurler of the year, was there as well, and it was a real special occasion in Cooley-Roo on Saturday afternoon.
It was, Jack, and I suppose there from the start, I have never hidden my allegiance or my love for Kerry football, and that's not going to change anytime soon, except when they're playing Limerick, of course. When they're playing Limerick, that's a different story. As I actually explained that to David Clifford, once Limerick are out, I would be an ardent Kerry. I just love their football, Jack.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I think everyone is in the same boat.
I love their attitude to football. But yeah, Jack, look, just an overview of the weekend. Like, we had 4 Limerick clubs in action. And any weekend when you have 4 in action and 3 of them win, that's a pretty good return. And you know, the upshot of it all is that at the end of the day, we have, I think this is unprecedented, Jack, but I need to check it. This year we have 4 Limerick teams in provincial club finals.
Yeah. 4 out of 6.
I'm very, very doubtful that it has happened before, which is fantastic. And we've a Camogie club Adare in an All-Ireland semi-final. So it's happy days. But going back to Castlemahon and going back to Cooley-Roo, the first thing one has to say about Cooley-Roo, and I'll talk about what happened between the white lines in a minute, but happiest congratulations to Fiona Castlemahon GAA Club, who, in my opinion, did an absolutely excellent job in the logistics and the preparation for the game in conjunction with the Gardaí. And, you know, their ground was excellent for a start. The condition of their ground was excellent from a playing perspective. But everything surrounding the day, the accommodation for spectators, the accommodation for us working in the media. Now, I know you were working at the far side of the field from where I was, but ours was quite comfortable. Davy Byrne and myself were working on one side. You obviously were working with the stream on the other side. But, you know, the way everything was laid on, the way the parking was organised, Jack, the way the stewarding was organised, the input of the ladies, I thought it was, look, irrespective of the result, Jack, it was one of those days that you will remember, the day we were in Cooley for the Munster semi-final. Full credit to Fionn and Castlemahon. And they did an absolutely fantastic job. And well, you know, why should we wonder about this, I suppose? But it's the resilience, and it showed where the real pulse of the GAA is, in the heart of rural Ireland.
Yeah.
We don't have to have our simple stadiums, our Park of Keeves, our TUS Gaelic grounds. The people and the clubs in rural Ireland can manage and organise big events, and I think that's the message, the striking message that comes home from that. Now, as regards the game itself, I suppose it would be the most optimist of the optimists that would have expected Castlemahon to win against the Kerry champions, particularly with Kerry, the record of Kerry champions in this competition, and indeed in all Munster club competitions. And you know, there was a stellar cast, Jack. In that you had the Clifford brothers on one side, David and Paddy, David the Footballer of the Year, and on the other side you had our own Seamus Flanagan, the holder of 4 All-Ireland medals. You know, and somebody quipped to me going into the game that Seamus Flanagan had twice as many All-Ireland medals as the Cliffords put together. So, which actually is correct. You know,
it is 4 and 2.
That was only just jocosely, you know. But the game itself, Sean Downey wasn't nominated to play on the programme. He started, and I thought he did a very good job in shadowing David Clifford. Like, David Clifford was restricted to 4 points, 2 from play and 2 from frees. Now, Paddy Clifford was very, very effective at centre half back, Jack. You were there now as well, and you would have to agree with that. Very,
best
very
player in the field.
I thought. But, you know, I suppose the obsession was with containing the Cliffords. But the O'Sheas went to town.
Yeah.
The 3 O'Shea brothers and the forwards, they scored 111 between them.
All from play.
All from play, which was a phenomenal return, you know. But you'd have to credit Castlemahon, like, they battled and they battled and they battled, you know, and they were battling against the tide, and a very, very strong one at that. But you know, there's no shame in Castlemahon going down to a side of the calibre of Fossa. And I'm making the prediction here, and might come back to haunt me, and you're somebody that's most likely to hang it around my neck if it doesn't come to pass. It'll take an exceptional team to stop Fossa winning the All-Ireland.
It will, and I think that's the case for every Kerry team that enters Munster. But Fossa are pretty much a complete team, because even, you know, contain David fairly well, and to still rack up of 122 and an awful lot of that from play as well. They are a good team, and you know, Castlemahon did battle till the very end against all the odds. Even when the result was probably out of the question, close enough to half time, they kept going to their credit, and they got a few scores at the end to put more respect on it. But overall, I think as a day, as a spectacle, it was very enjoyable, very memorable. I'll echo your sentiments there about the people of Castlemahon and Fiona and surrounding areas that made it possible, because they did have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that crowd there. And the game was sold out. I don't know if there's ever going to be a junior football game sold out in Limerick again, but they'll always say that they sold out Cooley. So a very memorable day overall. There's no doubt in that. But
they sold it out, Jack, but everybody was comfortable, and all spectators were comfortable.
Oh yeah, look, it was a very enjoyable day. There was no issues.
Absolutely fantastic, and the way the crowd dispersed afterwards, Jack. You know, it all happened so quickly, like that. This big long tailbacks of traffic and everything. The traffic plan that was in place was excellent.
Yeah, I stayed behind for 5 or 10 minutes to help Liam and Johnny with the equipment, and I drove straight out, and I was down in that kind of the back kind of quarry area, and it was perfect. There was loads of cars in there. Everyone got out fine and safe. There was no delays. There would have been, I suppose, a lot of families probably had to wait for their kids to leave the field, because to their credit, to Seamus Flanagan and David Clifford, they stayed in the field for about a half an hour, signing every autograph that came their way, probably jerseys and hurleys and slitters and footballs they've signed 100 times before, so a credit to those two lads. I saw a video of David running away afterwards saying he was going to miss the bus. So, it was everything good about the J was encapsulated in Cooley-Roo on Saturday.
Yeah, but Jack, you've said an absolute mouthful there, and whatever kudos come the way of Seamus Flanagan and David Clifford, and people who behave like him and who are real role models for our games and for our kids, full marks to them. You're absolutely right. They were prepared to sit it out there on the field as long as it took, till every last young fella and every last young lady, every last one, got the photograph, got the selfie, or got the autograph, or got the signed jersey. Full credit to them, absolutely full credit to them. And these are two of the superstars of our sport.
Yeah.
And they're down in Cooley-Roo in the heart of rural Ireland, and they, there's no running for the bus or running for the changing room of with those boys, and that is one of the great. That's one of the things that make these guys great. And full credit to David Clifford and full credit to our own Seamus Flanagan.
Yeah, and full credit to the people of Cooley-Roo. It was a very enjoyable day. Yeah. But while, it was a memorable day for, I suppose, the occasion in Cooley-Roo, 24 hours later in Semple Stadium, it was a very memorable day for the result on field, as Newcastle West beat Clonmel Commercials in the Munster semi-final to book their final spot against Kierans Rallies. I suppose Newcastle rode their luck a small bit at times, especially towards the end of regulation time. It was into the 8 minutes. There's only 5 added on, but there was delays here and there. There was 2 black cards in that time. There was injuries, etc. And Newcastle were attacking. But like they did against Adare, they worked into scoring position, not necessarily a scoring player. It was Darren Doherty in Kilmallock a few weeks ago, but it was Ruan O'Connor in Semple Stadium, scored the point to bring to extra time. And they didn't look back in extra time. They were thoroughly dominant, scored 1-3 to a point. Overall, looking at the contest as a whole, they were the better team for probably 60-65 minutes, only for a blip just before half-time and just towards the end of the game. But Newcastle West are into a Munster senior final, the first Limerick side since Drum in 2008, and 100% deserving of that place in the final.
Absolutely, Jack, 100%. And I was one of the people that believed that they were up against it in Clonmel Commercials, and for the simple reason of they had home advantage. They moved the game from Clonmel to Thurles, to Semple Stadium, because they saw the possibility of an advantage in that. And of course, they had beaten Nemo Rangers. But when you reflect back on it, we never had a doubt, Jack, I think, and we've been saying it here for a good while now in this medium. We never had a doubt about the quality that's in the Newcastle West team and about the potential that is in their team. And reflecting on the game since now, I did not see the game because I was in the Piarsaigh Ballina game, which we'll be talking about in a minute. But I look, they brought that A game to Thurles, and I'm just beginning to believe that, and we said this in the context of reviewing the Munster football, the Limerick football final, that we were never going to see the best probably of Newcastle West in games against Adare and Monaleen, because they dug out the results in both of them, and both games, no doubt at all about them, they stood them in good stead on Sunday because they had to work really, really hard to win both of them. But they accord too much respect to each other, and there isn't anybody prepared to take chances or any of that sort of a thing. But I believe that Newcastle West, and I actually said it to Kieran, and I met him in Cooley-Roo on Saturday, that if Newcastle West go forward, they're as good a football team as anyone will see going forward. And
Yeah.
we have seen this, and some of their forward movements, and you'd have to say they're sporadic, maybe too sporadic, during the Limerick campaign. Like, they're a joy to watch when they move forward and when they go forward. And particularly, they have the players that can play that type of game.
Yeah, and they're without some of their key forwards as well. They didn't have AJ at all this year, and obviously Jamie Lee has been abroad for the last 3 years. He was one of the best footballers.
He has been abroad,
in Limerick when he was here. So
they're without finishers. A couple of good finishers. So look, but it's a side laden with talent, and we saw during the year, and we've mentioned it here, I think, a couple of times. About fellas like Rowan O'Connor and Emmett Richter, the impact and the way that they have dovetailed so seamlessly into the team. They're giving an extra dimension to the team. All right, you have the hardcore of experience. And Jack, you have full back line for Newcastle West that this year are playing exceptionally well. And we saw in the Limerick Championship that the first goal that they conceded in 7 games was a minute before halftime in the 7th game. They'd gone almost 6.5 games without conceding a goal. Like we've seen Mike O'Keefe, form of his life, down the heart, in great form at fullback. Brian O'Sullivan. Brian O'Sullivan has gone very adventurous this year.
he has very.
He's moving forward and supplementing the attack, but that's obviously Jimmy and his management team's plan for him. But the role that he's asked to play, he's doing it very well. Like James at centre back, rock solid. And what about big Mike McMahon above and we haven't spoken at all about Cian Sheehan and Ian Corbett.
Yeah, I think Cian Sheehan was just men amongst boys kind of stuff below in Semper Stadium. There was a clip, I think TG Carr had it up, and he gets the ball probably in his own 45 and slams through him at his ease and off his left end, his supposed weaker foot. He's really taken that form that got him an All-Star nomination into the club championship.
Jack, I would like to ask, I have a bit of advice for TG4. Would they ever show that clip to the All-Star selectors?
Yeah, I just think the fact Limerick didn't reach quarter-final went against Keane in the All-Star selection, but we won't get bogged down on that now. But you're right.
Jack, I'll be talking about All-Stars later.
Okay, yeah, I know, but on Cian Sheehan is, they've class all over the field, and they're a very balanced side. And I think the likes of Emmett Richter, you mentioned, who got the goal, and Rowan O'Connor and Todd Donovan started as well, have added a lot more balance to that team. They've some great finishers there to come on, and it was a brilliant performance. And Kierans O'Reilly's beat Aerogue Ennis, and they were down 14 for a lot of it, and it was an important man that got sent off. But looking ahead to the final briefly, Newcastle should hold no fear going in against Kierans O'Reilly's. Last year they were beaten well by Austin Stacks, but they know the level they have to get to now, and they're seem to improving year on year, so they should hold no fear going into that final.
Not only do they know the level they have to get to, but they're getting there, Jack, which is the very important thing. And this is a very, very special generation of Newcastle West players. We've talked, I suppose, since this medium started about the quality of the squad that Newcastle West have. And it's just simply a phenomenal squad. And the Cameron O'Reilly's should hold no fears whatsoever for them. Now, I know the Cameron O'Reilly's will have their big names. They'll have Tommy Walsh, and they'll have David Moore, and they'll have the Barry John Keanes of this world.
Yeah.
Clonmel Commercials had 6 players that started in the Munster final of 2020 and beat Cork down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Yeah, you make a good point there. And as well, I think Newcastle West, they ended, it was a 23-year wait for a title in 15. That would have been Ian Corbett and Cian Sheehan and Brian Sullivan and Mike Mack would have been all relatively young at that time, and they weren't used to winning. Whereas now the lads we've mentioned coming up, the likes of Rowan and Todd and Emmett Richter, Dear McKelly, and these boys are so used to winning that it becomes a habit, and that's the worry for other teams in Limerick is, if Newcastle get over the line in the Munster final, when they come back next year going for 3 in a row, they'll have no fear that it's more than capable and they have within them. So it bodes very well for Newcastle. There's no doubt in that. For the other teams watching on, it's a small bit worrying, but it's great for Limerick football, and it's a sign of where Limerick football is going. That the club championships, that they have a team back there. In 08 when Drum were there, Limerick were very strong, and they got the finals in 9 and 10, and the quarter final in 11. So overall, it's a reflection of where Limerick football is at. Segueing into the intermediate championship, Matt, you were at it.
Yeah, but just to take up your point there on where Limerick football is at, gone are the days, and hope they never come back, where the Limerick clubs were always the whipping boys in the first round of the club championships.
Yeah.
This year, all our clubs have all our 3 clubs have won games in the Munster Championship. You must remember that whilst Castlemahon were beaten by Fossa, they had won a first round against Shamrocks. So all three Limerick clubs have tasted success in Munster Club Fair this year. So it bodes very well for the future, and it mirrors where Limerick football is probably at the moment, on an upward trajectory, and long may it continue. Yeah, I was in Kilmallock, and it's a game best forgotten, and I at times I was wondering, did I do something desperate in a past life? Jack, it was an awful game. It was an awful game. It didn't even remotely resemble a contest between sides seeking a place in a provincial final. I would definitely say that Piarsaigh definitely didn't play to their potential. No question at all about that. And on the other hand, they were probably lucky in regulation time, because it was the heroics of Owen Sherlock in particular who saved a penalty from Stephen O'Brien 3 minutes after the break. And it's a Sunday afternoon jaunt to Kilmallock that Stephen O'Brien will certainly want to forget, because his penalty was saved in regulation time. His penalty was saved in the penalty shootout. He had a shot at goal that hit the upright, breezed off an Piarsaigh defender onto the crossbar before being cleared. Those 2 incidents happened in the second half, and had either of them gone in, you would have had to fancy Ballina to have gone on and win the game. But then it would have been rough justice, because Ballina set out from the start with a sweeper. And the sweeper was somebody that's very, very familiar to Limerick football fans. He won a county senior football medal with Ballinora in 2014 and represented Limerick for about 5 or 6 years at midfield. Tom Lee.
Yeah.
And another interesting character in the Ballina side, of course, was Treaty United's League of Ireland goalkeeper Jack Brady. Formed the last line of defence. And I was saying to myself and my co-commentator, semi-off air, going into the penalty shootout, has it got to be advantage now to Ballina with a League of Ireland goalkeeper between the sticks? But Owen Sherlock had different ideas about that, because he saved the first 2 penalties in the shootout and really put Piarsaigh in the driving seat. Jack, there are, I won't say there's one notch better in Piarsaigh. There's about 8 or 9. They were never allowed to get into their stride. And you know the way Piarsaigh play football, they like to play it open and they play an exciting type of football. And but there was no chance at one stage. I remarked it actually in commentary that there was no Ballina player in the Piarsaigh half of the field. That was the type of game that we had. It was a very, very disappointing game, a very, very disappointing semi-final. The consolation out of it is semi-finals are there to be won. And, the Piarsaigh did that. There was a good size attendance. The fact that I think that they were, what kept them entertained and maintained their interest in the game was that the outcome was on the balance, and a lot of them, I'd say, were in the same vein of thought that we were on the commentary box. That it was going to end with penalties, and we would have a bit of excitement to take home with us.
Yeah, well, as you said, semi-finals are there 2-1, and you don't ever have to look back at that game if you don't want. I'm sure it appears to look and see what needs to be done better. I don't think Rathmore will come with a sweeper in the final. Kerry teams like to get out there and play. But look, the job got done by Piarsaigh. They're into a Munster final. It's on next Sunday week. So, look, we'll be looking at that in depth, that final with Rathmore. Moving on, we also had an interesting game in London last Saturday afternoon, Matt. Adare were in All-Ireland Junior quarter-final camogie action against Tara of Great Britain. And I suppose looking at the first half an hour of the game, you could say maybe a small bit of jet lag or something, but Adare started slowly. Tara started strongly, but a goal by Aoibhinn Houlihan just before half-time seemed just to settle it there, and in the end they ran out 3-8-9 winners, relatively comfortable for a lot of the second half, but very tricky assignment. They got past it, and now they can look forward to an All-Ireland semi-final against either Bridini Oga or Granmore on Sunday week the 11th as well. But for Adare to travel over to London and get the win is no easy achievement.
No, Jack, and when we were talking here last week, without calling it a banana skin, we were pointing it out as being a potential banana skin, because I was looking at the composition of the Tara team. Now they were not just the London champions; they were the All Britain champions, and whilst our own Claire Enright, from formerly of Ballingarry and formerly Limerick underage player, was the one that stuck out for us, who was full back on the day, but they were drawn from counties with a very, very strong camogie pedigree, and I'm talking about the Corks, the Kilkennys, the Galway. Like the entire full forward line was from Galway, and Wexford, and Roisin Kelly, who was their main scorer from frees, was from Wexford. But Tara had a very strong breeze in the first half, and it had affected the game. And I thought that Adare were slightly slow in settling as well, Jack. Now, they got the perfect start, if you like, when Poppy Giltinan put over the bar and inside the first minute. And I was saying to myself, anyway, this is exactly what we wanted. But they had fallen 6-2 behind in the we'd say after 25 minutes, and very few could argue, but that Tara were worth it at that stage, Jack. Because they were putting pressure on it. They weren't allowing Sophie O'Callaghan at centre half back, and you know the importance she is to this team. They weren't allowing her to get into her dominant self. Like they were crowding around her and making sure, but you could see as the half was wearing on that their best efforts were failing, and she was coming into the game, and she was thundering into the game actually. And now the goal that they got was probably a bit of a fortuitous nature. It looked as the clock ticked up to 30 minutes, actually 31 minutes, the goal came. But on 30 minutes, they were 4 points behind. And it of course, from a defender's point of view, it was a horrendous delivery from Caoimhe Costello, as she can deliver those probing balls that cause all sorts of problems, and it broke. And Aoibhinn Houlihan, Jack, she finished it to the net, and what a predator she's turning out to be now. Aoibhinn wasn't nominated to play in the Munster final. She came in as a late replacement when Aisling Conley cried off, and she got a goal within a minute of the start of the Munster final. The goal that actually proved very decisive as the game went on. And she got 2 goals on Saturday. And by half-time, they were level. And then after half-time, Jack, it was obvious, right from the throw-in of the second half, and you saw it, Adare were into the rhythm that we knew.
Yeah.
Sophie O'Callaghan was dominant at centre-back, Grace McNamara at full-back. We had Caoimhe Costello really showing us why she was nominated for an All-Star. And she got a couple of great points from play, Caoimhe Costello. And, and Evian Houlihan got the second goal and Poppy Giltinan got the third. But Jack, I was hugely impressed again. I have to say 4 of that Adare team have been named on the Limerick Minor Camogie team for next year. And I thought all 4 of them were outstanding in London last week. Amy Mullins at cornerback, Ciara Dunn at centre, in the centre of the field. And by the way, talk about hurling pedigree. Ciara Dunn is the granddaughter of Tony Maloney, who was back in the 70s. He was the prince of midfielders. He was one of the mainstays of the Clonmel team that won 3 in a row at midfield. An absolutely elegant hurler, represented his county. You have Carla Dunn then at wing forward, again, very, 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 very good. And she's on the minor team next year, as is Poppy Giltinan. Poppy Giltinan, her progression in the last 12 months has been simply phenomenal.
Yeah,
I saw her last year in the football, and I thought she was exceptional at that for her age. But those players are blessed, Jack. Those players are blessed in that they have the like of Grace McNamara, Sophie O'Callaghan, Caoimhe Costello to show them the way, to show them the ropes.
Yeah, and they're certainly
Aisling Connolly when she's fit,
they're being led by the best, and they're responding.
Aisling will be back for the semi-final, and of course, it will give Michelle Gallagher a nice little headache with Evian Houlihan with 3 goals in 2 games.
Yeah, it's not the worst headache for a manager to have, but yeah, Adare into an All-Ireland semi-final that'll be played next Sunday, as I said, on the 11th. So we'll touch on that game more next weekend. This weekend we have a pair of Munster finals for Monaleen and St. Kieran's. Monaleen play Roscrea in the intermediate, and St. Kieran's play Ballygiblin in the junior. We'll start with intermediate. Monaleen versus Roscrea. Interesting tie. 2 teams that were relegated last year that will see themselves as senior teams, and they've confirmed that for next year. But, first and foremost, they have a Munster final to play. Monaleen got over St. Joseph's Dora Bearfield 2 weeks ago, while Roscrea beat Inniscarra of Cork. It's an interesting matchup, Matt, and it'll be no means easy for Monaleen, but this side have shown, and especially the younger players coming through, that they're no stranger to finals days, and they beat Bruff and played very well in county final days. So you'd be hoping for more of the same from a Monaleen point of view. You would. You said there that both of them were relegated last year. They were relegated in different circumstances. Monaleen were relegated from senior hurling because they simply didn't amass enough points in their 5 games, or whatever the format was last year. Roscrea were relegated through a restructure of the Tipperary Championships. Monaleen, I've been saying for quite a while now, and that the Monaleen team that won the Limerick Championship bears little resemblance to the Monaleen team that were relegated from senior hurling last year. They have shown considerable improvement. There has been the influx and the infusion of new players who are quietly stepping up to the mark. And you the big players on the team, like they are producing the goods. Like Larkin Lyons is the team captain, Jack. He's in the form of his life. Yeah,
absolutely superb. We see Marco Dwyer Absolutely fantastic. Ed Doyle, the people that you look for leadership are providing it. Andrew Latouche Cosgrave is rapidly coming back to full fitness and will probably certainly in the game against Dora Bearfield put his hand up for that he's fit enough for a starting place in the Munster final. And you've the experienced Jamie Power in goal, who hasn't been really all that well tested this year, because the defence has been forming well in front of him. But they're facing a difficult challenge, Jack. There isn't a doubt about that, because Roscrea were playing Senior B in Tipperary last year, and very, very formidable outfit. Liam England is their manager. He's Eddie Brennan on board in his backroom team, who would know a thing or two about winning matches and winning All-Irelands or winning competitions. 8 All-Ireland medals and 11 Leinster medals to show for it. But of course, Spray hold a unique position in the club championships in Jack, whether you know it or not. They were the first team to win the All-Ireland Senior Championship, Clubs Championship, in 1971. And I'm around long enough to remember the team, and there was some very, very big characters in that team, including Tig Murphy in goal, who was in goal on and off for Tipperary at the time. Tig O'Connor captained Tipperary to an All-Ireland victory. You had one of the finest forwards of all time on that team in Francis Loughnane, and you had a certain gentleman at full back was the late Kieran Carey, who, whether you ever heard of him or not, Jack, Hell's Kitchen.
I have. I heard him, all right.
Was the Tipperary full back line, and he was an honorary member of it, more than an honorary member of it, of Hell's Kitchen. That's your history lesson for this week. Now, don't be looking for any more, but
okay.
But Kerry had won 4 All-Irelands at that stage with Tipperary in 61, 62, 64 and 65, so and had played in 5 All-Irelands at that stage, so he actually had played in 6, to be honest, but that was the quality. That was the quality and the pedigree that they've had, and since then they don't seem to have been producing the same level of players to the county team, probably with the exception of Big Roger Ryan, who came afterwards and was a very formidable forward, both in size and in hurling prowess. But they have been very, very impressive this year, Jack. Now they got a right. They got a right test in the Tipperary final from Gurtnaho Glengool, who they only beat by a point. But when they went into the Munster Championship, they seem to have found a new level. And they were speaking to somebody recently, a referee that had refereed them in a challenge game lately, and he was hugely, hugely impressed with them. They had a very big win over Ballysaggart in the quarterfinal, and like it looked like only a 3 points win or a 2 points win over Inniscarra in the semi-final, Jack, but Inniscarra got 2 late goals.
Yeah.
To put a loss on the score, like so. There's no doubt at all about the formidability of Roscrea. It's huge. It's a huge test for Monaleen, but Monaleen this year have been rising to test, Jack.
Yeah, 100%.
Like the only team that beat. I have to say this, Jack, because if it was Ballysteen, you would say it. The only team to beat Monaleen this year was Glenroe. Did you know that?
I would have known that. I didn't come to the top of my head now straight away, but I knew where you were going that when you said about Ballysteen. But yeah, go on.
It was very far down your list, I'd say.
It was. But
but like they face tricky challenges, and I'll tell you why. In the last round of the championship, they had a massive win over Effin, if you recall. Yeah. Now, the way the championship was set up, what it meant was that they would have to play again the following week in the semi-final, which was a banana skin. Because the day that they played Effin in the final round of the championship, you had a confluence of events. Most notably that you had Monaleen at their best, Effin at their worst on that particular day. And like that was borne out in the semi-final. because I thought, and we were in agreement, Jack, that Effin were a very, very good side. And right from the start, we were tipping Effin to be in the shake-up. And Effin gave him a real test in the semi-final, as did Bruff in the final. Now, that was the ideal way for preparation for going into a Munster Championship. Fast forward to the Munster Championship, they lead at 5 points at half-time. They see the lead eroded. With 10 minutes to go, they see St. Joseph's Dura Bearfield take the lead twice. They found a response. First time they found an instant response in the shape of an Ed Doyle point to level matters. The second time they found a response with a goal for the ages from Marco Dwyer.
Yeah, brilliant goal.
So, look, if you're talking about resilience, Monaleen have it in spades. And like we spoke about the older players, let's talk about the Brian Kenny, the Ronan Lyonses, the Joseph Fitzgeralds, the Lachlan McLaughlin, Lachlan McHales, Ben Hayes, ready to come off the bench. They all featured in the under-19 final this year against Bruff.
Yeah, they're building. They're definitely building up Monaleen,
and have seamlessly made the transition to adult intermediate hurling, and I've no doubt will seamlessly make it to senior hurling. So Jack, Monaleen are underdogs. Make no mistake about it. But there's a resilience in Monaleen, Jack.
Oh, they've shown that, and I was talking to Umber saying it'll be their 11th game of the year. It's going to be a step up in terms of quality, but they've played all different types of teams so far. They'll be well accustomed to what's going to come their way. This Sunday, 1:00, in Park Rent is live on Munster JTV if you can't make it for whatever reason. But it promises to be a cracking encounter between two sides that will play senior hurling in Limerick and Tipperary next year. But for now, it's all focused on a Munster final. At the same time, in Mallow at 1:00 on Sunday, you have St. Kierans will play the defending champions Ballygiblin in the Munster Junior final. Now, we know your opinions on having a team that are defending champions in the grade, but first and foremost, going to St. Kierans, they've been perfect so far this year. They won their 8 games in Limerick. They won their only game in Munster so far. They beat the Banner after extra time. If they win on Sunday, it'd be the perfect 10. It's been a brilliant year for them so far, but they will be up against it in the final.
They will certainly be up against it. But again, like Monaleen, look, I suppose, Jack, it was clear to us from early on in this year's Premier or Junior A Championship, even though we didn't get to see much of it, but thankfully I got to see more St. Kieran's a couple of times in the closing stages. That for St. Kieran's, last year they went into the county final as firm favourites. They lost it, and to Caroline, and you were just wondering how they would react to it. Because although I know you're of the school that believes that you lose one and you didn't go on and win one, and to a fair degree you're right, but you just wonder. But some teams don't. All teams don't react, Jack, to the way that St. Kieran's did to losing a county final.
No,
some of them can go down under it, and you have seen those as well. But it was quite obvious from the start of the year that St. Kieran's meant business. And that was borne out. 100% record in the group stages, 5 games, 5 wins, 10 points, into a quarter-final win over Kilteely, Drumclean. Saw them in the semi-final against Killeedy. They were hugely impressive, in my opinion. Saw them in the county final against Drumbradford, was extremely disappointed with them in the first half. Found their form in the second half to run out convincing winners. That in total sums them up. Then they go to Ennis to play Banner in the Munster semi-final. need extra time to dig it out, dug it out.
Yeah.
You know, like everything they've ticked an awful lot of boxes in 2022, Jack. St. Kierans. And like going into a Munster final, their 10th game of the year with 9 straight wins, few can argue with it. Few can argue with their pedigree, few can argue with their right to be there. They have 10 players who featured in the final 10 years ago. Now, some of them were almost in short pants in those days. But these are the players that will bring the experience. You know, let's say they'll bring a small bit of hurt as well from losing that final 10 years ago, because they lost it in dramatic circumstances. They were playing Kildare from North Cork. They lost the game by 111 to 12 points. They lost their scorer-in-chief back then after, I think it was about 10 minutes of the first half. Tony Nolan suffered an injury which injured his day, which ended his participation in that final. And right at the end, you know, a ball came in and was struck, and you know, it was merciful for Kildare that it went to the right side of the post. We could be talking a different narrative and a different story. So they will be looking back on that. And of course, you know, when they won in 2012, it meant that they were promoted to intermediate. They got, was it 4 years in intermediate, 13, 14, 15? They got 5 years in intermediate before being relegated. And like when you are relegated, and it wasn't a question of bouncing back for them at that stage, and it was a question of regrouping, which they have done very well. And we cannot forget, Jack, either, when we're talking about St. Kierans, like the St. Kierans were duly involved until the county senior football quarter final. Like St. Kierans, Jack, pulled off a unique double in 1985. They won the county senior football championship and they won the county junior A championship. And they were captained in the county junior A championship final by Jim Wolfe, the now retired CEO of Dairygold, one of the huge figure in the agricultural sector. And like for a while this year, you know, they were on course to repeating this. You know, like they were enjoying a very, very good run in the group stages of the football championship until they came unstuck against Adare. And I saw them in their quarterfinal against Monaleen, and it was a day that St. Kierans did anything to do themselves justice. You know, they were very, very poor on the day, and they'll be forced to admit it. But like they have so many dual players, Jack. They really, really now have a huge overlap. And like after losing that football final, even though they're two different codes, like there was a job, like Chris Mannigan and the management team, they had a job to do to pick him up, but they did it.
Yeah, they did, and now they're into a Munster final, and their opponents need no introduction.
Well, no, and they're managed by Ronan Duane, who was a well-known figure in Cork, played singer with Cork, well-known in Cork hurling circles. He's from the Adare club, and like you know, they've some big name players like Mark Keane among them, who played senior hurling recently with Cork, and he's the man that scored the goal right at the death of the 2020 Munster senior football semi-final that sensationally knocked Kerry out of the championship. They have Colin English, although he's been missing for the last couple of games, I think through injury. He captained Tipperary, I think, to All-Ireland under 20 honours in 2018. They've Dara Flynn, who scored 12 points against Limerick in the 2021 Munster under 20 final in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, which Limerick lost by 2 points. So that's a bit of pedigree, and of interest to Limerick fans is Barry Coffey. The wing back is the son of Mike John Coffey, who played senior with Limerick and played underage with Limerick and with Glenruan, was certainly very, very well known and well thought of in Limerick GA circles.
Yeah, they're a formidable team, Ballygibbon. There's no doubt about that. But St. Kieran's will be quietly confident going on to the game. That throws in at 1 o'clock on Mallow. It's live on Munster JTV. And there should be no fear for St. Kieran's, because Caherline pushed them all the way last year. I think St. Kieran's this year have shown that they've improved, and I think they'd fancy their chance against Caherline to meet again. So even though Ballygibbon got to an All-Ireland final,
I'll conclude my remarks on St. Kieran's by saying St. Kieran's do not do being phased or overawed.
No, and they're a very difficult team to play against in any code, football, hurling, or whatever you want to play against them. So you'll be quietly confident for St. Kieran's to pull off a shot, but they will be outsiders going into that game. St. Kieran's will face one of these teams next year, either in Piarsaigh or Croke Kilfinney, who meet in the Limerick Intermediate Hurling Championship final. It's been a long time coming. They both got through their respective semi-finals back in late October, but I'd say the finals are delayed owing to the Piarsaigh's Munster commitments in football and hurling. But we'll have the final this Sunday at 1 o'clock in Ballygran. Both teams have perfect records going into the final, Matt. One of them will have to lose that perfect start. Last year, Croke were beaten in the final by Effin. The previous year, Newcastle West beat the Piarsaigh in the final after extra time. So it's finally Pie's game between two sides that have been so far ahead of the field for the majority of the championship, it's fair to say.
Yeah, it's the bridesmaids of the last 2 years, I suppose, Jack, you could describe them. But certainly two teams that are certainly there on merit. And I'm a small bit disappointed that and I'm sure the teams are disappointed as well at the way this thing has dragged on. They played their semi-finals, I think, in late October, which will be 6 weeks from the time that they will square up in the final on Sunday. And it was a kind of a forgotten competition, but it raises something that I've touched on in the last couple of weeks about a reformatting of the championships in Limerick. Like the intermediate championship in terms of provincial fare is going nowhere. And I think that's unfortunate, like that the winners don't get an opportunity, to progress. So, but having said that, like we have the ingredients of we've the ingredients of a cracker, Jack, absolute cracker, and like you have Croke Kilfinney, like who are on a dream role for the club, like the club that made the breakthrough in 2020 when they won the Junior A Championship for the first time, then progressed on to intermediate in 2021 and reached the final, like which was a fair achievement. And you'd say to yourself at that stage, when they lost the final, they lost the final rather convincingly, I suppose, Tiff and Jack, you were there that day when we saw the Patrick O'Donovan show. You'd say to yourself, was there danger of regression after it? Not a bit of it. They've stepped on and they've picked up again and they're in the final and rightly in the final. But Jack, Ballygunner won the Waterford Senior Championship for the 9th time, and their intermediate team won the Waterford Intermediate Championship. So the Piarsaigh winning the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship and the Intermediate Championship in the same year is not as unthinkable as it might seem. Because I was just looking through it in the Piarsaigh squad, and you daren't move beyond number one.
Yeah.
Like, who's seen it all, done it all, absolutely fantastic, and former All-Star, and equally adept to making a contribution at the other end of the field should close in freeze arise. I'm talking about Shane Dowling, of course.
Of course, yeah.
and it was awful that his inter-county career was cut short by injury, but it's great to see that he has the opportunity to do what he loves to do, and that's play the game. And like he has made a huge contribution, both as a shot stopper and a scorer at the other end, all in the one season. And to be honest, somebody like Shane Downing could do that. But your fellas like James O'Brien, your fellas like Niall Buckley, your fellas like Pat Gleeson, David Green, all these lads have been around the senior team for quite a while. And they will bring a huge level of experience. But what they will bring, of course, as well, and I suppose both sides in many ways will share this, they will bring a winning mentality, Jack. Like the Piarsaigh, like we've stood back at distance and admired and are in awe of their underage structures. And like you fellas coming through like on this that are coming through this intermediate team now, fellas like Vince Harrington, who was very, very, very good with the McMiners. You've JJ Carey, like who helped Ardskull reach to a first Pro Cup earlier this year. He's on the panel, but not making the starting 15. So it gives you an idea of what the strength is of this Piarsaigh team. To dismiss them because they're a second team, you do it at your peril. This is a very, very formidable Piarsaigh team. Whether they'll be good enough to beat Croke, I don't know. I think it's very, very close. I scratch my head and trying to come down on one side or the other, but I come down slightly in favour that the Croke might edge it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting matchup, and it's good when the two best teams in the competition meet in the final. It promised to be a cracking game. I think the Piarsaigh experience might just edge it for them, but I think we can both agree that it'll only be probably a one-score game, whichever side it falls on.
Absolutely, and whichever side wins, it will be playing Premier Intermediate Championship next year, and they certainly will embellish that competition, no doubt about it.
Yeah, we've seen teams intermediate recently have kind of come up. This year, Newcastle, Glenroe, KP, Munger, they've all come into Premier Intermediate and laid down their marker fairly early. So there's no reason why this should be in the line for these teams. Obviously, the Piarsaigh can't get promoted again. This Premier Intermediate will be as high as they can go, but that's for another day. But it does promise to be a cracking game this Sunday in Ballygran at 1:00. Before we go, Matt, just a few other things. We have the Junior B hurling in Killeedy is starting this weekend, I think, but Bruff won't be out till next weekend. So again, credit to Killeedy for organising that competition. It's important that the Junior B sides get their Munster and All-Ireland campaigns as well.
Absolutely, but credit to Killeedy. This competition has been going since 2006, Jack, and it becomes bigger and better as the years go by. And there are no fewer than 15 teams, 15 counties represented in the competition this year, 9 in Leinster and 6 in Munster. And uniquely, there's a team, the Wicklow champions, are taking part this year. And the Leinster is made up of, the 9 is made up of Leinster counties, including Wicklow, plus Antrim and plus Galway. Like that's more that's in the more than is in the Lee McCarthy Cup. And there are 15 teams in it now. The Leinster Championship has been in progress for the last couple of weeks, but the Munster Championship starts this weekend, and whilst Bruff are not involved this weekend, they'll have more than a passing interest in what transpires at the weekend, because there's a double header in Killeedy, a quarter-final double header in Páirc Iad Naofa in Rahena on Sunday. The curtain raiser there is 6 Mile Bridge from Clare against St. Brendan's Ardfert from Kerry. But the 3:00 game is the meeting of Fremont from Cork and 4 Mile Water from Watford. and the winners of that game will be playing Bruff the following Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to Bruff. But the Killeedy competition is up and running, and we spoke earlier, Jack, about how well Fiona Castlemahon do things and how they did last Saturday. The same shout out must go to Killeedy GA Club. It is absolutely fantastic, Jack. The level of organisation that is down there, and the whole sense of occasion that surrounds each game is simply phenomenal, with the presentation of the man of the match and the hospitality down there. It's just fantastic. It's those occasions that I love covering, and we'll be looking forward, of course, to the Bruff game on Sunday week. But fair play to Killeedy, and you would say when this thing started off, what was its durability going to be? Started off in 2006. Here we are, 17 years later, and it's bigger and better. Like, it's a competition, 15 counties represented. Fantastic, Jack.
I think you summed it up when you said there's more teams than that, than the Liam McCarthy itself. So credit to Killeedy. But again, we'll be looking into that more next week when Bruff make their bow in the competition. And before we go, Matt, you were at an award ceremony last Friday night for the Limerick under 14 and under 16 winners, and you got to meet Emma Duggan of Meath. But good to see that a player of that caliber down Limerick, and further promotion of ladies football in Limerick. Yeah,
absolutely. It was a great occasion, Jack. And it was great to see so many Limerick girls getting under 14s and under 16s getting Munster medals. And it was fantastic that the occasion was adorned by the presence of 2 times All-Star, 2 times All-Ireland senior winner with Meath, Emma Duggan, a fine young lady who only, believe it or not, Jack, only sat her leaving certificate last year and is in second year in DCU. So here is a player that the world is at her feet in terms of football. And of course, a second guest was our very own Christine Reedy, who was named on the TG4 Junior Team of the Year, and another fantastic ambassador. And the type of encouragement and the type of thoughts that they shared with the young girls that were representing Limerick and picking up medals was absolutely phenomenal, and an absolutely fantastic exercise on the part of Limerick LGFA to bring big stars like that to meet what we hope will be the young stars of the future. And the words of encouragement that they gave to him was simply phenomenal, Jack. And just as we're on ladies football, Jack, the league fixtures, the National League fixtures for 2023 were revealed during the week, and Limerick are in Division 4B. Now, we knew they were in Division 4, but they're grouped with Kilkenny, who are returning to the competition, Derry, Leitrim, and Wicklow. And believe it or not, Jack, with the vagaries of this home and away system or whatever it is, but all Limerick's 4 games are away from home. Now, I checked it with the LGFA when I got it, because, I thought it looked odd, to say the least. And it was reaffirmed to me that it was correct, and that the premise on which it was based was that when Limerick last met those 4 teams in the league, they met them at home.
Yeah, I can see the reason behind it, but it does seem very unfair. I don't think that's how it works in most other codes anyway, that it goes home and away regardless of how long it's been. None of them are short trips either. Like Kilkenny is at least an hour and a half from Limerick for everyone in Limerick, not to mind the players probably out west or further afield than that. Leitrim, Wicklow and Derry are all lengthy trips. So, it just puts Limerick at a disadvantage straight away, and it's unfair, I think, first and foremost, to say the least. But
the league structures, Jack, have reverted back. They've reverted back to similar to pre-pandemic, formats. Division 1, 2, and 3 will comprise of 8 teams each, who will play a full round robin with the top 2 in each qualifying for the final. There are 9 teams because of London in Division 4. Now Limerick are in the 5-team group. And 2 teams in each group will qualify for semi-finals. There will be semi-finals in Division 4. There will be straight finals in all other 3 divisions. That's the format which I got from the LGFA during the week anyway. And but there's something. Look, Jack, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I wouldn't unashamedly say it. I'm in awe of the manner in which the LGFA at national level, go about their business. They're second to none. But I'm just wondering, how is this type of situation allowed to arise? I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, certainly something needs to be looked at. Very unfair on the players that they've no home games to look forward to, and for fans as well. The cost of living and the cost of petrol and diesel to be asked to go to these games. I think it's something that there's definitely time to be looked at. The league won't start till the end of January. There is time to maybe rectify that situation. Hopefully it does get solved. We've an hour and 6 on the clock.
Yeah, Jack, I'm not finished. I told you I'd be reverting back to All Stars, and this is my last say on them for this year. I don't want you to be bringing them up to me again, because it's only doing my head in, Jack, to be quite honest. Okay. I'm most disappointed that Cueva Costello didn't get an All-Star. Call a spade a spade. There are not 6 forwards in this country better than Cueva Costello.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, Jack.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think sometimes the All-Stars, you don't know where they're being picked from, and I think a lot of time it goes down to who's winning at the end of the day, and obviously Limerick were knocked out in the quarterfinal, but Cueva was definitely deserving of an All-Star, but we won't dwell on it, because... I look,
only annoying me for the rest of the day, Jack, if we dwell on it, because my say is simple. There are not 6 better forwards in Ireland than Cueva Costello.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that will be in the same boat as Cueva that are thoroughly deserving of one and just missed out for whatever reason. But look, we won't even try and dwell on that. We will dwell on the fact that we do have a pair of Munster finals to look forward to this weekend involving Limerick teams. We have a Limerick intermediate final between Croke and the Piarsaigh to look forward to. We have guaranteed to have 2 more Munster finals next week to look forward to. Hopefully we'll be reflecting on a pair of Munster titles for Monaleen and Kierans, and we'll be looking back on that intermediate final. We'll have Adare to look forward to as well. So there's so much still to come. We're closing in on Christmas. It'll be December by the time we next record, Matt. But for now, we'll leave it at that. 68 minutes, just over the hour. Trying to make it a bit shorter and more concise for people to listen to. But a huge thank you to you, Matt, and to everyone that listened and commented and gets in touch. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, that you get a notification every week, to like it, to share it on these socials, and try and expand this community as much as possible. But as always, a huge thank you to you, Matt, and to everyone that listened. We'll be in touch next week.
Thank you, Jack.
The impression of the game you get out with what you put into is like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, wet. And Johnny Buckley to do that to Tomas O'Shea. He deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the work out today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there